Hi, it's Uber Grace time, and I'm just been thinking this morning a little bit about the fruit of the Spirit. Now, for those of you that aren't clued up about these things, in a book called Galatians, it's like a letter that was written by a guy called Paul. In chapter 5, he talks about basically the result of living by the Spirit rather than living by sort of fleshly, humany stuff. At the beginning of the chapter, he talks about how if you sort of try and fulfill the Spirit, if you live the Spirit by the Spirit, you won't fulfill the lusts of the flesh. And what we tend to do in religion, and this is prevalent in Christian religion, is that we try and squash the desires of the flesh so that we can live more effectively by the Spirit. And this is completely the opposite to what Paul says. Paul's saying, actually live by the Spirit and you won't end up sort of getting conquered, if you like, and living by the flesh. Now, flesh, spirit, these are just terms that are used, particularly the flesh. It does literally mean meat. The word he uses is the word sarx, which is just a word for meat and flesh. Other translations have slightly different words, but I think it's quite a good one because it's quite evocative. And it's really looking at all the sort of more humany, fleshly kind of stuff that we've turned religion into. So, for example, we're looking for a fleshly return of Jesus, which I don't believe is happening anymore. We're always looking at how we can make ourselves act and behave in a better way, which is all about the external stuff in our lives rather than our hearts. And this is another thing that is really living by the flesh. But it goes on to make this long list of things that if you live by the flesh, you end up doing most of the things that you're trying to avoid doing. Because if you're focusing on something, you tend to go towards it. So if you're focusing on not taking drugs, you're going to end up taking drugs. If you focus, like if you're if you're coming out and recovering, if you're really struggling, I must not do this, you do tend to end up struggling with it more and doing it. So he's saying, forget that, live by the Spirit. And then he describes, and I've talked a little bit in some videos, a little bit about living by the Spirit, so you'll have to sort of go through those. But one of the things that amazes me about how almost perverse humans are, it's like we've got this list of things that are results of living by the Spirit instead of trying to be a Christian, a good Christian all the time. And then love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control, and I think one other that I've missed. And these are great things that everybody wants, and everyone's striving really hard to get them. In fact, I think every time I've ever heard the fruit of the Spirit talked on, people have actually turned it into law. You need to be more loving as a Christian. You need to try and be more joyful as a Christian. You've got to be more patient and certainly more self-disciplined or self-controlled as a Christian. And they've actually, how we do this, I don't know. But we've turned the idea of fruit and results of the Spirit into a fleshly work of trying to be happier, trying to be more peaceful. And of course, what happens? We end up in more anxiety, more depression, and we end up being kind of more separated from one another. And this is just bonkers, but isn't it great if we do get a handle on living by the Spirit and living out of who He is within us, and living as divine beings that we're supposed to be, then actually as we're focusing on that, on everything that's good and pure and noteworthy and whatever, then if we're thinking on those things and we're focusing on living out of the Spirit, then I think a very interesting thing will happen, not just to us, because obviously we will end up being more peaceful, more gentle, more loving, which would be great, wouldn't it? But also, I think when there's a group in a town where there's a fair number of people living by the Spirit, so not just a lot of Christians, because most Christians live by the flesh, but if a lot of Christians are starting to live by the Spirit, then actually the areas that they live in and are influencing will become more loving, more tolerant, more peaceful, more happy, more happier. Can you imagine that actually part of your mission in life is to give up having a mission in life and just relaxing and living by the Spirit. But actually the fruit of that would be living in a happier place with more peaceful people, not just peace between people, which would be awesome, but also less anxiety and depression in people's lives. And then actually the world could become a kinder place. The world and the town we live in could become a more gentle place. Wouldn't that be a great witness? Wouldn't that be actually what the kingdom of God spreading in an area would actually look like? Not people queuing up to get into big massive services every night, not more bigotry and rivalry between factions of churches in Christendom, not, oh, you Muslims over there and us, but actually peace and happiness in an area because we're living by the Spirit, and the fruit of that is these wonderful things. I think that's ace. It's not something we can really aim for because that puts us back in the flesh again. But I think as we relax and let go and just start to learn what is this living by the Spirit malarkey, then I think we're going to end up with a much better world to live in. Wouldn't that be a great thing? Well, if you've been inspired or encouraged, please like, share. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, join, whatever it is. And I'll see you in the next one. Good one. Bye now.